He found an alien girl tied to a sign, and what he did next changed everything. Rain slid down the metal skin of Cinderspan, the great ring city that circled the planet below. From the high walkways, the world looked like a vast ocean of clouds, glowing faint blue from the lights underneath. Steam rose from vents drifting between glass corridors and humming pipes. Everything smelled like oil, salt, and storm. It was supposed to be a quiet evening shift. Mara Voss, a maintenance worker, had come to replace a pressure valve in the lower docks. She liked this part of her job. Silent, mechanical, predictable. Machines never lied, never stared, and never begged. But tonight there was noise. A crowd had gathered near one of the cargo rails. Voices echoed off the walls, mixed with laughter and rain. Mara hesitated, then walked closer. She saw something that made her stop cold. A young alien girl stood tied to a steel post. Thin cable wrapped around her wrists, binding her arms in front of her. Bare feet pressed against the wet metal floor. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, shining faintly in the rain. Long white hair clung to her shoulders, heavy with water. Around her neck hung a cracked board, the words smeared but still clear enough to read, "Claim for 1 ration chit." Mara's stomach turned. People whispered and pointed. Some laughed. Others looked away, pretending not to see. The girl didn't cry. She didn't even move. She stood there, chin high, like someone who had already run out of fear. Mara moved closer. Her work jacket was soaked through, boots splashing in shallow puddles. She saw the faces of the people around, traders, dock runners, low-deck workers. None of them looked ashamed. One man smirked and said, "You buying or just staring, lady?" Mara's voice came quiet but steady. "I'm looking at the sign." He grinned wider. "You can have her. Price is fair. 1 ration chit." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small power cell. A full one worth far more than food. "Take this instead," she said. The man blinked, confused, then snatched it greedily. Before he could say anything else, Mara stepped forward and tore the board from the girl's neck. The laughter around them stopped. The only sound left was the rain. Mara reached for the folding knife on her belt, the one she used for cutting cables. The girl flinched, her breath catching. Mara's tone softened. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." The first tie snapped with a sharp click. The second took longer. The wire had cut deep into the skin. When it fell away, the girl's knees almost gave out. Mara caught her by the elbow, firm but careful. "You can walk?" Mara asked. The girl nodded weakly. "Yes." Her voice was thin but calm. "Good. Let's go." They moved through the service tunnels, away from the staring crowd. Rain drummed against the glass above as they descended into the lower maintenance halls. The city's bright lights faded behind them. After several turns, Mara stopped at a narrow metal door. She keyed it open. Inside was a small room, a maintenance pod she used for resting between shifts. A heater buzzed softly in the corner. Tools lined the walls. The air smelled faintly of salt and coffee. "Sit," she said. The girl obeyed, still trembling. Mara handed her a towel and a thermal blanket. "Dry off." The girl looked at her, confused. "Why?" "Because it's raining," Mara said simply, setting a small pan on the heater. "And because you're freezing." The girl's eyes flicked to the sign still in Mara's hand. You took it," Mara nodded. "We'll repaint it later." Silence filled the pod. Outside, thunder rolled through the city's shell. After a while, Mara asked quietly, "What's your name?" The girl hesitated. "Irie. Who tied you there, Irie?" "They called themselves dock priors," she said. Her voice shook. "They said I disobeyed orders. Refused my placement." "What kind of placement?" Irie looked down. "An old contractor wanted me for his quarters. I said no." Mara stirred the food slowly. "And they punished you for that?" Irie nodded. Rain hit the window harder. Mara handed her a plate of warm synth meat and grain. "Eat." Irie stared at the food, then took a cautious bite. She chewed in silence, eyes darting to every sound. "You don't have to be afraid," Mara said. "I'm not afraid," Irie whispered. "I just don't trust this place." "Good," Mara said softly. "Neither do I." For a long time they ate without words. The heater hummed. The city outside hissed with steam and wind. When the plates were empty, Irie looked up. "You could have left me there." "I could have," Mara agreed. "Why didn't you?" Mara thought for a moment, then said, "Because I'm tired of pretending not to see things." Irie stared at her, unsure what to say. Finally, she nodded. Mara stood and hung the broken board on the wall. The red letters glistened in the heater's light. Tomorrow, she said, we'll cover those words. Write something new. What would it say? Eerie asked quietly. Mara's eyes softened. Something that belongs to you. Outside, lightning flashed across the clouds, lighting up the dark city like a pulse. Inside, two strangers sat in silence. One rebuilding trust, the other remembering what it meant to act human again. And somewhere deep in the walls of Cinderspan, systems hummed on, unaware that one small act of defiance had just changed everything. Morning came to Cinderspan in shades of gray and silver. Thin fog drifted through the metal beams, and light filtered through the cracked glass above. The storm had passed, but the city still dripped, every pipe and walkway sweating with rainwater. Inside the maintenance pod, the heater buzzed softly. Mara Voss sat at the table, tapping through maintenance data on her pad. Though her eyes weren't on the numbers, she kept glancing toward the sleeping figure curled near the heater. Irie lay wrapped in a blanket, her white hair spread across the mat like threads of glass. For the first time since the night before, she looked peaceful. Mara poured herself a cup of cold coffee and took a slow sip. Her reflection stared back from the metal mug, tired eyes, a faint scar near her jaw, the kind of face the city ignored. She liked it that way. But last night had changed something. The silence didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt heavy, waiting. When Irie stirred, she blinked at the ceiling, confused for a moment. Then memory returned and her shoulders tensed. "You're safe," Mara said. Her tone was calm, practical. Eerie sat up, pulling the blanket closer. "Where are we?" "Maintenance block 37. My shift quarters." The alien girl's violet eyes scanned the room. The heater, the tools, the narrow table. Everything was neat, arranged by function. "You live here?" she asked. "When I need to. It's quiet." Eerie hesitated, then whispered, "Quiet doesn't mean safe." Mara looked up from her pad. "You're right, but it's better than outside." Eerie touched the bandages on her wrists. The skin underneath was raw and red. "They won't forget what I did," she said softly. "They'll come looking." "Maybe," Mara replied. "But they'll have to get through me first." Irie frowned. "You don't even know me." "I don't have to," Mara said. "I know what it looks like when someone gets punished for standing up." For a while, the only sound was the hum of the heater. Mara moved to the small stove and started another pan of food, thin strips of synth meat, heating in oil. The smell filled the pod. Eerie's stomach growled quietly and she turned her face away in embarrassment. "Eat," Mara said, placing a plate in front of her. "You'll think better on a full stomach." Eerie nodded and ate slowly. Between bites, she said, "I used to work in the translation office on level 8. I spoke 3 hybrid tongues. I thought I had a future here, and what happened? They told me I was too foreign to trust." Her voice was steady, but the edge beneath it was sharp. "So they reassigned me to the docks. And when I refused the next offer? You saw what happened." Mara listened without interrupting. She understood more than she said. She had once been in the security corps, back when orders were clear and mercy was weakness. Leaving had cost her everything, but she didn't regret it. When Irie finished eating, she asked, "What will you do with me now?" Mara leaned back in her chair. "You need new clothes and a cover ID. The scanners will flag you in those rags." "That's illegal," Irie said. "So is leaving you to die," Mara replied. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then slowly Eerie nodded. "All right." Mara stood, pulled on her coat, and grabbed her satchel. "Stay here. I'll be back soon. I'm coming with you." "Not yet." Irie's chin lifted. "You don't trust me." "I don't trust them," Mara said. "If they see you, they'll report it. You'll disappear before I reach the next lift." The girl hesitated, then sat back down. "You think hiding will fix this?" "No," Mara said quietly. "But it gives us time to think." When Mara left, the door sealed with a soft hiss. The pod fell silent again. Eerie stood, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders, and walked to the small window. Outside, the city glowed like glass veins, alive with movement. Cargo drones moved across the docks. Far below, the ocean shimmered under pale sunlight. She saw her reflection in the glass, tired eyes, skin marked with faint bruises, hair tangled from the rain. She barely recognized herself. Her gaze drifted to the board hanging on the wall. the one Mara had torn from her neck. The red letters had dried into dark stains. Claim for 1 ration chit. Irie stepped closer. Her hand trembled as she touched the edge of the board. I choose my name, she whispered under her breath. The words tasted strange but strong. When the door opened half an hour later, Mara stepped in carrying a sealed package. Clothes, she said, setting it on the table. Irie opened it carefully. Inside were layers of soft gray and blue, plain concourse wear, light and clean. This cost more than 1 ration chit, she said quietly. I had savings, Mara replied. Never used them. Irie gave a small smile. It was the first time her face softened. You're terrible at minding your own business, Mara shrugged. Never learned how. When Irie stepped behind the curtain to change, Mara turned away, busying herself with the stove. The sound of fabric rustling filled the air. When Irie stepped out again, the clothes fit perfectly. She looked different. Not safe yet, but stronger. How do I look? She asked. Like you belong, Mara said. Irie's smile widened just slightly. That's dangerous here. Then we'll deal with dangerous, Mara said. For the first time since she'd been tied to that rail, Irie's shoulders relaxed. Outside, the fog thickened again, wrapping the city in silver mist. Inside, 2 strangers shared a small space filled with quiet, warmth, and the first fragile thread of trust. And above them, in the polished towers of Cinderspan, someone was already asking questions about the missing half-breed translator. But for now, neither of them cared. The day felt still. The danger could wait until tomorrow. The next morning began with the hum of turbines and the faint shimmer of light breaking through the clouds. Cinderspan never truly slept, but this hour was as close to calm as the city ever got. Steam rose from the lower ducts, curling around the walkways like ghostly ribbons. Mara Voss stood by the pod's narrow window, watching the mist drift between glass towers. Behind her, Irie tightened the strap on her gray tunic. The new clothes fit her neatly, though the color drained what little warmth her violet skin held. She looked almost human now, almost. You sure about this? Irie asked. Her voice was quiet but sharp, like she was testing the air for danger. Mara nodded once. You can't hide forever. Best to walk before they make you crawl again. Irie's throat tightened. You think anyone will believe I belong here? They don't have to, Mara said, slinging her tool satchel over her shoulder. They just have to look away. The door slid open with a hiss. Cool air rushed in, smelling of oil and wet metal. The city beyond was waking. Vendors setting up stalls, drones zipping overhead, lights flickering across the concourse like broken stars. They stepped out together. At first, Irie's steps were careful, too quiet. Her bare feet, now covered in borrowed polymer shoes, made soft clicks against the steel floor. Every sound seemed too loud, every glance too sharp. But Mara walked beside her without hesitation, steady and unbothered, as if nothing around them could matter. They passed 2 maintenance crews. The workers nodded to Mara, barely sparing a glance for the girl at her side. Still, Irie felt their eyes linger when they thought she wasn't looking. Keep your head up, Mara said softly. No one stares down someone who stands tall. I'm not hiding, Irie whispered. Good, Mara replied. Then don't start. The lower market stretched ahead, rows of steaming food stalls, glowing signs, and the constant buzz of engines. The smell of fried kelp and sweet lorn fruit syrup mixed with the sharp tang of coolant. It should have felt alive, but to Irie it felt like a stage. Every voice, every movement felt rehearsed, built to ignore what hurt. They stopped at a small stall where a short woman in mechanical gloves ladled steaming porridge into metal bowls. The vendor's smile froze the moment she saw Irie. Her gaze flicked between them, then down to her counter. 2 bowls, Mara said evenly. The woman hesitated. We're out of stock. Behind her, 2 vats boiled over, full and steaming. Mara's tone didn't change. Try again. A few seconds passed before the vendor muttered, That'll be 8 credits. Mara paid without blinking and waited. Irie stayed silent, staring at the ground. The woman finally slid the bowls forward. Thank you, Mara said simply and walked away. They sat at a corner bench under a dripping awning. The porridge was hot and thick, steam rising into the cool air. Irie stared at it for a long time before tasting a spoonful. The sweetness of the berries hit her tongue, sharp and unfamiliar. You didn't have to do that, Irie said after a while. Do what? Force her to serve us. Mara stirred her food slowly. If you let one person deny your place, everyone will think they can. Eerie looked at her, unsure how to answer. You talk like someone who's fought wars. Mara gave a short, humorless laugh. Maybe I have. They ate in silence. Around them, the market noise built. A steady hum of voices, clattering dishes, the rhythmic thump of cargo lifts. No one bothered them again, though Eerie still felt every look slide across her skin. When they finished, Mara led her through a narrow corridor that opened into a maintenance bay. The air changed here, cooler, cleaner. Rows of pipes glowed with soft blue light. Machines hummed quietly, alive with purpose. This is where I work, Mara said, kneeling beside a pressure unit. It's not much, but it keeps the city breathing. Eerie crouched beside her. You fix this alone? Always. Mara handed her a small wrench. Hold that, Eerie obeyed. The sound of clanking metal echoed softly through the bay. Mara explained the system in simple words. How oxygen flowed through filters, how valves had to stay balanced. Eerie listened closely, trying to understand. You know, she said after a while, you don't talk like most humans I've met. Most humans stop talking about what matters, Mara replied. They worked together for nearly an hour, until the soft hum of machinery became almost peaceful. Eerie's hand shook at first, then steadied. For the first time in weeks, she felt useful again. When they finished, Mara wiped her hands and looked at her. You learn fast. I used to repair translator nodes, Eerie said. Same principles. Machines are easier than people. Mara nodded. They don't judge. Eerie hesitated, then said quietly, Yesterday when you cut the cables, I thought you were one of them at first. Mara paused. One of who? The kind who see suffering as routine. Mara met her eyes. I was once. Eerie stared at her, realizing she meant it. There was no pride in the confession, only truth. Mara turned toward the window. Beyond the glass, the ocean shimmered in pale green light. Come on, she said. You've earned real air. They climbed a narrow stair to a walkway above the bay. The wind hit them immediately, cold but clean. From here, Cinderspan looked endless, metal and glass stretching into mist. Eerie leaned on the railing, eyes wide. I didn't know it could be beautiful. Mara smiled faintly. Most people forget to look. For a long moment, they stood there in silence. Below them, the city pulsed with life, unaware that one small corner had just changed. Eerie turned to her. You really think I can walk out here like this again? You already are, Mara said, and for the first time Eerie believed her. The wind caught her hair, lifting the silver strands into the gray light. The reflection in the railing showed not a prisoner, not a stranger, just someone alive. From somewhere far above, a security drone drifted past, scanning the walkways. Its lens swept across them, paused, then moved on. It didn't sound an alarm, Eerie exhaled. Maybe quiet can be safe after all. Mara looked at her, a hint of pride in her eyes. Only when we make it so. They turned back toward the maintenance tunnels. The day was far from over, and somewhere the dock priors were still watching. But for now, two figures walked side by side through the mist, unafraid to be seen. The following days passed like slow waves through steel corridors. Cinderspan kept moving, turbines turning, vents breathing, lights flickering, as if nothing had changed. But inside Mara Voss's small maintenance pod, change had become something real. Every morning, Eerie woke before the alarms. She cleaned the workspace, organized Mara's tools, and boiled the bitter kelp brew they both pretended to like. It wasn't comfort food, but it was a ritual, and rituals meant survival. When Mara returned from the docks each evening, they ate together in near silence. Not cold silence, steady, grounding, the kind that made words unnecessary. But peace in Cinderspan never lasted. On the third morning, Mara found a small notice glowing on her console. Inquiry filed. Unauthorized individual cited in Sector 37. She stared at the line for a long moment before powering the screen off. They're asking questions, she said quietly. Eerie froze halfway through folding a towel. About me? About someone, Mara replied. Doesn't matter who. We stay careful. Eerie swallowed hard. If they find me, they won't, Mara interrupted. But we'll need a record. Something that says you belong here. Her fingers moved quickly over the console. Screens flickered, showing registry codes and work logs. I can write you in as a technical apprentice assigned to my shift. Nobody checks maintenance rosters. Too boring for them, Irie hesitated. That's forgery. That's survival, Mara said. She handed Irie a data slate. Type your details. Any name you want. Irie stared at the empty field. Her hands trembled slightly. They already gave me one, she whispered. Then take it back, Mara said softly. Write something that's yours. After a moment, Irie began to type, slow, deliberate. Letters appeared one by one. She didn't tell Mara what she chose. When she pressed confirm, the console beeped quietly, sealing the false record into the system. Mara leaned back. Done, you're now officially a maintenance tech under my supervision. Irie let out a shaky laugh. That's the most human thing I've done since they tied me up. Good, Mara said, smiling faintly. We'll make sure they regret it. Later that day, they walked through the mid-level access tunnels carrying toolkits and oxygen gauges. The sound of running water echoed around them, soft but constant. Mara moved like she belonged there, every step measured, every motion efficient. Irie followed close behind, matching her pace. Why do you still work here? Irie asked suddenly. You hate this city. Mara didn't look back. Hate's a strong word. Let's say I stop loving it. Then why stay? Because someone has to keep the system running, Mara said. And because small good things still matter. They reached the lower coolant line. Steam rose from a cracked pipe, hissing faintly. Mara crouched, scanning it with her wrist display. Pressure imbalance, she muttered. Probably an old seal. Irie knelt beside her, eyes curious. I can help, Mara handed her a wrench. Steady hands only. Together they loosened bolts, replaced seals, checked the readouts. Irie worked with quiet focus, her movements precise and quick. You've done this before, Mara said, not pipes. Translation cores, Irie replied. But machines follow logic. People don't. Mara chuckled under her breath. That's true. When they finished, they sat on the edge of the catwalk. Below them, the ocean glowed through the transparent floor panels, where a living mirror, endless and calm. For a while, neither spoke. Then Irie said quietly, They'll still come for me, won't they? Maybe, Mara said. But they'll find paperwork that says otherwise. Irie looked out at the mist, her reflection faint against the glass. You could have turned me in. It would have been safer for you. I tried being safe once, Mara said. Didn't like what it made me. What were you before? Irie asked. A soldier, Mara said simply. Before the war ended, before I saw what following orders did to people. Irie studied her face. There was no pride there, only weariness. And now? Now I fix leaks, Mara said with a faint smile. And sometimes people. Irie's lips curved slightly. That's better work, Mara nodded. Most days. Back in the pod, they ate in silence again. The board from that first night still hung on the wall. The red words half faded. Irie's eyes lingered on it. You said we'd repaint it. We will, Mara said, finishing her drink. You choose the words. Irie thought for a long moment, then said, something simple. Something true. She took a small brush and a tin of gray paint from the shelf. Carefully, she brushed over the old letters. The red vanished, swallowed by new color. When she finished, she wrote new words across the surface in clean black strokes. I choose where I stand. Mara stood beside her, watching quietly. That's a good one, she said. Mine would have said she's not for sale. Irie smiled faintly. Yours protects me. Mine reminds me. The heater hummed softly behind them. For a long while, neither spoke. Outside, the lights of Cinderspan blinked across the mist. Somewhere above, the dock priors still whispered and watched. But here, in this tiny corner of the world, two people had built something the city couldn't control. Truth, quiet and human. Mara looked at the sign once more. Tomorrow, we'll test the new ID. Walk through the markets again. Irie's smile faded slightly. You think that's smart? It's necessary, Mara said. If you keep hiding, you'll always be what they called you. If you walk beside me, they'll have to see something else. Irie nodded slowly. Her fear didn't disappear, but it no longer ruled her. Mara turned off the lights.
Get some rest, she said.
Tomorrow we make you real. As the city hummed outside and the heater glowed warm, Irie lay awake a little longer, staring at the fresh words on the wall. I choose where I stand. For the first time, the words didn't feel borrowed. They felt hers. And somewhere deep inside the endless steel of Cinderspan, that small act of choice, quiet, stubborn, human, and was more powerful than any weapon the city had ever built. The morning came cold and clear. No storm, no fog. Cinderspan shone like a clean blade under thin sunlight. From the maintenance pod window, the walkways looked empty and bright, as if the city had washed itself and put on a better face. Mara Voss set the repainted board on the table. The letters were dry and sharp. I choose where I stand. She checked the mounts, tightened the screws, slipped a can of clear sealant into her bag. Then she looked at Eerie. Ready? Eerie swallowed. She was dressed in plain gray and blue, hair pulled back with a thin cord. The bruises on her wrists had faded to pale bands. She nodded once. Let's go, she said. They took the service stairs instead of the lift. Steps rang softly on steel. The air smelled like old rain and warm metal. As they climbed, the city sounds grew louder. Vendors calling, drones chirping, boots crossing wet floors. Mara moved at a steady pace. Eerie matched her, breath tight but controlled. When they reached the lower concourse, the light changed. It was harsh here. Bright white reflected off glass rails and polished panels. The same place. The same cargo line. The same metal post, only today no crowd waited. Just the memory of one. Eerie stopped a few paces away. Her hands trembled once, then went still. She looked at the post for a long time. She did not look at the floor. Mara set the board down and opened her bag. Your choice, she said softly. We can leave it, or we can make it theirs to see. Eerie stepped forward. Her voice came out even. Higher, she said. They should have to look up to read it. Mara's mouth curled into the hint of a smile. Higher, then. She drew a small driver from her belt. Together they lifted the board. The metal felt cold through the gloves. Eerie held it in place while Mara set the first screw. The drill bit hummed. Steel bit into steel. Sparks whispered and died. People noticed. They always did. A pair of dock clerks slowed, then pretended they weren't watching. A vendor paused mid-pour, thin steam curling from her ladle. A squad trainee stopped at the corner, unsure if this was trouble or just work. Mara set the second screw. The board sat straight against the post, clean and defiant. The words caught the light. I choose where I stand. Eerie let her hands fall. She breathed out. The breath shook, but only at the end. Seal? Mara asked. Eerie nodded. Mara handed her the can. Eerie shook it, then brushed a clear coat over the letters. Slow, careful strokes. Shield against weather. Shield against hands. A small child tugged her father's sleeve and whispered, What does it say? The father read it silently, lips pressed thin. He did not pull the child away. He did not step closer. He just stood there, not sure which choice mattered more. From above, an auditor drone drifted into view. Its lens spun, clicking softly as it scanned the rail. It aimed at the board, then flicked to the post bolts, then to Eerie's face. A blue rim of light circled the glass eye. The drone paused. Its logic did not know what this was. Not a hazard. Not a sale. Not in the rules. Move along, Mara murmured to it, almost amused. The drone's rim flashed green. It slid away with a thin hum. Eerie gave a breath that was almost a laugh. It couldn't file me, she said. Good. Systems hate choice, Mara replied. More people gathered, then drifted on. The vendor with mechanical gloves, the one who had lied about porridge, met Eerie's eyes for the first time. Her jaw tightened once. Then with effort she nodded. Not an apology, not yet, but not cruelty. Eerie turned back to the sign. She reached up and touched the lower edge, not to fix it, just to feel that it was real. Her fingers came away clean. I thought I'd be sick, she said softly. Coming back, does it help? Mara asked. Yes. Eerie looked out over the concourse. The place where laughter had been. The place where fear had hardened into silence. It helps. They stood together a while. The city moved around them like water around a rock. Fast, cold, and forced to split. A courier cut a line through the crowd. A security pair crossed the far rail, glancing over once, then again, then not a third time. No orders, no excuse. No permission to be human or not. They kept walking. A shadow shifted near a pillar. Two men in rough coats watched from behind a stack of crates. Doc Priors. They did not step forward, not yet. They measured the space with narrow eyes and quiet mouths. Mara saw them. She let her gaze pass over and away, not lingering. She stood a little closer to Eerie. Hungry? She asked, as if the men weren't there. Yes, Eerie said. Her voice was steady now. Very. They walked to the edge stall. The vendor worked stiffly, but she did not lie this time. 2, Mara said. Coins down. Bowls served. The steam smelled like berries and sugar and something ordinary and soft. Eerie took the spoon and ate without shrinking. You didn't look down once, Mara said. I promised myself I wouldn't, Eerie replied. Keep that promise, Mara said. Everything else will follow. They ate quickly. On the way back to the post, Eerie slowed. She looked at the sign again. The words still shone. A teenager with a courier pack stopped beside her. Strong letters, he said, trying to sound older. Who wrote them? I did, Eerie said. He nodded. Good hand. He jogged off, embarrassed by his own courage. Eerie's laugh was small but real. It changes, she said. Not fast, but it changes. Mara picked up the empty sealant tin and tucked it away. The first change is always the hardest, she said. After that, the city learns to look at you differently. Or it learns to look away. They started toward the stair. The two men by the crates did not follow. Not in the open. One raised a wrist and tapped a message. A thin red light blinked, then died. On the landing, Eerie paused. She looked down the concourse one last time. The post stood clean. The sign held firm. A child traced the air with a finger, copying the letters. A guard read the words and pretended he hadn't. Eerie turned to Mara. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me, Mara replied. You did the hard part. You came back. They descended into the cooler air of the maintenance levels. Pipes hummed. Floor plates rattled softly under their feet. Eerie's shoulders rolled back, looser than before. She looked taller. Not by inches, by choice. In the pod, Mara hung her jacket and stirred a small pan on the heater. The room smelled like salt and heat and something safe. Eerie stood by the window and watched a lift glide past, full of faces that would never know her name. She spoke without turning. What happens now? Mara set 2 cups on the table. Now we work, she said. Now we hold what we made. Eerie nodded. And if they come? Mara's eyes stayed calm. Then they meet both of us. Outside, the light thinned. The ring shifted into afternoon. Somewhere above, a quiet order moved through an unlisted channel. No alarms, no squad. Just a test. A pressure against the edges of a small life. At the rail, the sign dried hard and bright. The wind could not lift it. The rain could not blur it. The old words were gone. The new ones were simple. I choose where I stand, the city did not care. The city always pretended not to. But people did. And people were watching. And so were the men who disliked choice. In the stillness of the pod, the heater hummed. The cup steamed. 2 figures sat close, ready to keep something human alive. And in a shadowed stairwell 3 decks up, a dock prior flicked his cigarette into the drain and said, Tonight. The night after they hung the sign, Cinderspan didn't sleep. It never did. But for Mara Voss and Eerie, the hum of the turbine sounded different. Sharper, faster, restless. The heater glowed low in the maintenance pod, throwing thin lines of gold across the walls. Eerie sat near the window, her reflection half hidden by the mist. They saw us today, she said quietly. Yes, Mara replied. She didn't look up from her console. That was the point. They'll come. Maybe, Mara said. But maybe they'll think twice first, Eerie frowned. You believe that? No, Mara admitted. But I like to pretend until it's true. The pod went quiet again. Only the soft hum of the heater filled the air. They didn't have to wait long. By the next afternoon, Mara's security clearance blinked red. Access limited, the message read. She didn't swear, didn't panic. She just stared at it for a full 10 seconds, then powered it off. Trouble? Eerie asked. They froze my ID for review. Means someone noticed the forged record. Eerie's hands clenched. Then it's me. I should go. No, Mara said flatly. You'd last an hour out there. Eerie turned away. You shouldn't have helped me. Mara stood, crossing her arms. You think I regret it? You could lose everything. I already did, Mara said. A long time ago. Later that night, they went out anyway. Mara insisted on walking the outer concourse, pretending it was just another inspection round. But halfway through the route, they weren't alone. 2 men waited at the far end of the walkway, leaning against a column. Their coats bore no insignia, but the cut was familiar. Dock Priors. The air between them smelled like ozone and oil. The taller one spoke first. Miss Voss, he said, voice smooth as coolant. City record shows you've been busy. Mara didn't slow. City record's always late, he smiled. You forged an ID for a missing worker. Dangerous thing, falsifying files. Mara stopped 2 meters away. Eerie stood just behind her, silent, eyes wide. You planning to arrest me? Mara asked. Not at all, the man said. We just want the girl back. You hand her over and the system forgets your name. Mara's tone stayed level. That's generous. But you'll have to remind me, what's the system worth again? The shorter man stepped forward. Enough to erase you, he said. Mara smiled faintly. Then you'd better write neatly. For a tense moment, no one moved. The city's lights flickered on their wet faces. A patrol drone floated above, lens turning red, then blue as it scanned the scene. Mara raised her voice slightly. Careful where you stand. That drone's got open mic feed. Interference counts as obstruction of duty. The taller man cursed under his breath. You're clever, he said. But clever people still fall. Mara's eyes were calm, cold. Then I'll make sure I land on you. The drone whirred louder. The men backed off slowly, disappearing into a side tunnel. The sound of their boots faded, but Eerie's breathing didn't slow. Mara turned to her. You hurt? No, Eerie whispered. But I thought, don't think, Mara cut in. They wanted a scene. We gave them a camera instead. Back at the pod, the silence felt heavier. Eerie sat on the floor back against the wall. Mara moved around the room, checking locks, tapping commands into her console. They won't try that again, Eerie said. They will, Mara replied. But next time they'll use paperwork, not threats. What do? We stay visible. They can't disappear people everyone sees. Eerie stared at her. You make it sound simple. It is, Mara said softly. Simple's not the same as safe. By morning, the threat became real. Mara's console flickered again, this time flashing transfer order. Maintenance staff, reassignment pending. She read it once, twice. They're trying to move me off the ring, she said. They're punishing you, Irie said quietly. Maybe. Or maybe they're testing if I'll fight. Mara opened her data log, scrolling fast. Then she began to copy files. Maintenance routes, nutrient reports, valve records, everything clean, perfect, and time-stamped. What are you doing? Irie asked. Publishing proof, Mara said. If they erase me, the record stays. Every repair, every cycle, no errors, no neglect. The kind of record that makes supervisors nervous. Eerie watched, amazed. You're fighting them with paperwork? Bureaucracy built this place, Mara said. Let's see if it can choke on itself. She hit send. The files uploaded to the public network. For a moment, the screen flashed data transmitted, then silence. Mara leaned back. Done. Eerie stared at her, a faint smile creeping onto her face. You just declared war with a maintenance log. Mara shrugged. Wars don't need guns, just proof. That evening, as the city dimmed into blue light, Eerie sat by the heater, hands wrapped around a cup. You risked everything for me, she said. Mara shook her head. For us, you're part of this now. Irie looked down. They'll still come. Let them, Mara said. They can't scare me with the dark. I helped build it. Eerie studied her for a long moment, then whispered, You think we'll survive this? Mara smiled faintly. We already have. Outside, the turbines hummed like a heartbeat through the metal. Inside, the two women sat in quiet defiance. Their shadows joined on the wall. Somewhere across the city, a Doc Pryor officer stared at a screen full of open maintenance files and muttered, She's clever, and in the reflection of his monitor, the words from the concourse still burned bright. I choose where I stand. He switched the screen off, but the words didn't go away. Dawn came pale and thin. Cinderspan wore a color that was almost gentle, as if the ring had taken a breath it did not deserve. From the pod window, the ocean below looked like brushed metal. Turbines hummed like a tired heart. Mara Voss sat at the table with her console open. Lines of text scrolled in neat gray rows. She didn't blink until the header changed. Transfer order canceled. Reason public audit pending. Note, staff record exemplary. Mara exhaled once, slow. She didn't smile, but the quiet inside her loosened. Eerie stood at her shoulder, hair tied back with a thin cord. They backed off. For now, Mara said. Eerie looked at the notice again. Your logbook forced it. Our logbook, Mara said, closing the screen. You typed half the labels. For a moment they just stood there, watching the reflection of the console fade from the glass. Then Irie reached into her pocket and pulled out 2 small rectangles of thin polymer. She had etched them the night before with Mara's engraving tool. The edges were clean, the words simple. The first read, "Inhuman script, Mara Voss II," in a curved, alien hand, IRI, followed by 3 small marks that meant chooses for herself. "Door tags," Irie said, "so the pod knows who belongs." Mara took the one with her name and turned it in her fingers. "You sure?" Irie nodded. "I decided when I came back to the rail." They attached the tags beside the door. The adhesive clicked final and soft. 2 names, 1 home. Breakfast was quiet as always. Bitter kelp brew, flatbread, salted protein. They ate without hurry, like people who finally had minutes to spend. The heater hummed. Pipes sang softly in the walls. When they finished, Mara lifted her satchel. "One stop," she said. Then work, Irie knew where. Her pulse quickened anyway. The rail? The rail. They took the long way, service stairs, narrow catwalk, a maintenance lift that shook like an old breath. Irie walked beside Mara, steps even, head up. She could feel the city watching in small ways. A stallkeeper's eyes, a courier's second look. She didn't shrink from any of it. The concourse opened like a mouth of light. No rain today, just sharp brightness and the smell of syrup and oil. The post stood exactly where it had always stood, no taller, no shorter, not kinder. The board was still there, straight and clean. The sealant had dried into a hard gloss. The words shone as if they were new. "I choose where I stand." A child read them aloud, careful and proud. The child's parent did not pull them away. A guard glanced once and kept walking. The vendor with mechanical gloves met Irie's eyes, then looked down, then up again and gave a small nod. Not apology, recognition. Mara took a cloth from her pocket and wiped a line of dust from the upper edge of the board. Ritual, not need. Irie touched the lower corner, the way you greet a friend. "Still want them to look up?" Mara asked. "Yes," Irie said. "Always." They stayed until the crowd forgot to be a crowd, until the sign was no longer the only bright thing in the lane. Then they turned toward the maintenance stairs. That was when Mara saw it. A lens blinked at the top of the pillar, a compact optic no larger than a nail. Not Authority hardware. The angle was wrong. The light was wrong. Doc Pryor's wrong. Mara didn't change her stride. "Left," she said quietly. "We'll take the cable walk." Irie did not ask why. They cut through a narrow passage where the railings shook and the air smelled like old salt. Ahead, the path split. One route went toward the coolant bay. The other ended at a blank service door. 2 men waited by the door, coats neat, faces tired. The same cut as before. "Miss Voss," the taller one said. No threat in his hands, only patience. "You cost us a simple solution." Mara stopped 3 paces away. "Solutions for you are problems for the rest of us." "We won't touch the worker," the man said, eyes flicking to Irie. "The board is enough. Take it down and the file closes. Leave it and people ask questions. Questions become audits. Audits become cuts. You like your job? You like pumps that work? Take down the board." Irie's voice was steady. "So your system runs on silence." "It runs," he said. "We all eat. We all keep breathing. Someone pays the cost. Be kind. Pay it quietly." Mara tilted her head. "You came without witnesses." He almost smiled. "So did you." Mara let the silence thicken. Above them, a patrol drone drifted into view. Not the cheap Pryor's optic. A city drone. Official lens, audible mic, public channel. Its red ring flickered blue, listening. "Careful," Mara said softly, not to him, to the air. "We're on inspection route 12. Any interference is obstruction." The man's jaw flexed once. He knew the law as well as she did. "We don't need force," he said. "We have time, transfers, missed shipments. Broken seals that take too long to fix. Deaths without names." Irie stepped forward before Mara could stop her. "You already tried time," she said. "It didn't work." The man turned to look at her fully. He saw the scars were fading. He saw the shoes, the clean tunic, the way she stood without flinching. "You think that sign protects you?" he asked. "No," Irie said. "She does. And I do." For a second, something like respect crossed his face. Not much, but real. "We'll be back," he said at last. "We'll be here," Mara replied. The men left without turning their backs. When they were gone, the drone dipped closer. Its lens blinked green and slid away. Public record saved itself. Mara waited until the corridor emptied. Then she laughed, a small breath that felt like breaking a thin shell. He asked me to be kind. Erie shook her head, smiling without humor. Kindness is not the same as quiet. They walked on. The coolant bay opened below them, wide and blue. Mara checked 3 valves, logged 2 readings, tightened a bolt that didn't need it. Business as usual, written loud. By midday, the message came short and cold, no sender name. Leave the board, we're done for now. Mara showed it to Erie. They blinked. Or they're waiting, Irie said. Both can be true, Mara replied. They went home by a different stair. The pod door recognized both tags and unlocked with a soft click. Inside, everything felt the same and not the same. Safety was not a place. It was a choice you kept making. Erie stood by the window. The ring outside shone too clean. The ocean below held its own quiet light. What now? She asked. Now we live, Mara said. She set 2 mugs on the table. Now we keep the pump steady. Now we make the next sound louder than yesterday. Erie turned. The next sound? Mara tapped the console. The registry pinged back. Apprentice active, 6 months of scheduled audits. A thin shield. A real one. That, Mara said. And this. She lifted the small brush they'd used on the board. There's a second plate in the bag. We hang it at the pod door where anyone can see. What does it say? Irie asked. Mara handed it over. Erie read the clean black letters. Stand here, Irie looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her mouth was steady. We will. They fixed the plate beside the tags. When they stepped back, the 3 pieces made a shape. 2 names, 1 place, 1 command. Evening fell like slow water. Lights along the concourse turned blue. Somewhere far above, a small red lens woke and then went dark again. Someone had lifted a finger and chosen not to press it. At the rail, wind slid along steel. The sign did not move. I choose where I stand. In the pod, warm air gathered in the corners. The heater hummed. 2 cups steamed. 2 figures sat close. Not hidden. Not loud, steady, the ring would keep turning. Priors would come quietly. The city would pretend not to notice. That was fine. They would answer loudly. With work, with names. With a plate on a door and a board on a rail and a life that refused to be erased. Mara raised her mug. To the pumps, she said. To the sign, Irie answered. And to the next problem, Mara added, a hint of a smile. Because there always is one. Erie's smile matched it. Good. We'll be ready. The camera would have pulled back then. Past the small room, past the rails and ducts and steady lights, past the quiet ocean and the endless ring. The city shrank. The sign didn't. And if you listened hard through all that humming steel, you could hear the new sound begin. Not sirens. Not orders, choice spoken out loud again and again. Until even the system had to write it down.